Hello, Hoops Heads, and welcome to the Double Dribble Show. I am Jimmy Carlton, your host, and with me, as always, is Mitch Jimmy. Like Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, we are back on talking terms.
Yeah, after our hosting scuffle continues, but I think we are really able to hold it through. And we are back, as always, to talk a little bit more about all the action in the NBA, basketball and semi-basketball related.
And off the court, did you see the Kendrick Perkins talking about how he brokered a peace deal through text message between Russ and KD, apparently?
I didn't, Kendrick Perkins' general NBA career would not have led me to believe that he was any sort of peacemaker.
Doesn't seem like a peacemaker. Doesn't seem like a negotiator type. No,
but he, listen, if, he has connections to both of those guys, and now that he's not really doing anything, he has a little bit of time to, help rekindle some friendships.
Yeah, on TNT, on the NBA on TNT last night, they had a good time on KG's show, didn't they? They got the old Celtics boys back together.
Yeah, and we will discuss some
everyone except Ray.
We will discuss some team dynamics as we go along in the show. But I do have to say before we kind of really get into it is that I think KG's Area 21 might be my new favorite basketball related segment that shows up on national television. If only because I don't know if you saw this or not, Jimmy, but KG has let's say a reputation for using colorful language on the court, off the court, in his day-to-day, constantly.
And a reputation with rookies and young players for being absolutely terrifying.
Oh yeah,
not exactly a telegenic presence, you wouldn't think, but
when you get him out and just talking about stuff on the court, I should say off the court, and in a nice leather chair. He's really good, but I did note that TNT did have to give him a nice red box with a button on it. It's the cuss button, because they haven't quite trained KG to not let him fly in the air. So you have to give him a little reminder, say, "Hey, hit the button. We'll do the 5-second delay. The FCC won't fine us too bad."
Right. It's like the Staples "that was easy" button, but that was a close call to getting a FCC fine.
That was a beeping noise.
We'll. I actually was curious about watching that last night. What your take was, because you're sort of a media consumer, and
you could say that, yes.
Yeah. And it's a show
I've been known to be.
Like that show is, KG's sort of segment within the NBA and TNT show, which is already a freewheeling, unconventional approach to the studio show, right?
Oh yes,
and then they throw it to KG, and it's very much like embracing this just open-ended, free, no rules, really no rundown or planning. It seems like it's just guys talking hoops. And it really has gotten, it's very popular. Like it's popular both within the NBA with players. I know there's players tweeting about it. People really like it. He's a likable guy. But then just the way that the TNT broadcast is, it's surprisingly been embraced by regular television viewers like us.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think that's kind of an extension of this this kind of informal brand of reporting that you're going to get that we saw with, as Twitter came up, when you get a lot of reporters not just communicating to the audience with a with a written column or a published column, even something on the internet. It's the communication method is much more informal, and so I think people are really responding to a less structured, less upright, shirt and tie, buckle down type of broadcast where you're getting a little bit more personality. I mean, they're showing tweets of Shaq's gigantic cracked lips while he's at home doing whatever Shaq does.
Making fun of JaVale
McGee. Charles Barkley continues his feud with the ladies of San Antonio. That's upsetting in a couple of ways. Yeah. But yeah, people are definitely responding very positively to this more laid-back approach to coverage. And I think it's a pretty solid step forward for a lot of networks that are kind of struggling to find new ways to connect with their audience.
Yeah, it's like we talked about Deion Waiters' essay last week. It's like the players' tribunification of media, right? Which I guess is what we're doing because as former top tier level athletes ourselves, we've now gone behind the camera. We're on the more analytical
with my
side.
Athletic resume.
I mean, I guess that's as good a segue as any to talking about Lonzo Ball,
another media really giant coming into,
because he has a new pair of shoes. I want you to tell people a little bit about the LeVar and the Big Baller brand and the new shoes. But our question of the day today is how much have you ever paid for? What's the most you've ever paid for a pair of athletic shoes?
Yeah. So
this for me, it's $140 for a pair of Puma Kings. I was a soccer player. Okay. Good kangaroo leather. I know Baxter Colburn's nodding. He appreciates. He approves.
Baxter appreciates some nice kangaroo leather.
But what about you, Mitch?
So I have a reputation as being someone, we joked about it in studio, maybe off the air, of being someone who appreciates his shoes. And someday I'll show you my shoe closet. And
give him a little taste right now.
Let you shame me.
Geez.
Okay. All right. Well, today I did not bring. That's not going to work at all. That's a bad angle. It's the other way. Oh my gosh, I'm not flexible. My pants are too tight. Today I'm wearing a nice pair of Nike Janowski Air Max.
Those are soft.
They're very soft, very light. A mesh with the very popular cherry blossom pattern on them.
It's that time of year.
It is. The cherry blossoms are blooming. But I have, let's say, somewhere between 20 and 30 pairs of shoes in my closet at this point, because I really do like them. I'm a big fan of the Jordans.
Sure.
I'm a big fan of some of the new Adidas stuff. For myself, my most expensive expenditure was a nice pair of the recently retro Jordan 3 original colorway True Blues that I might have spent like $190 on.
Okay.
It's a little bit more embarrassing for me because I'm not buying these like these aren't my athletic shoes. They're just really cool shoes, and I like to wear them.
You're just a big baller who doesn't have his own brand yet.
I am just a big baller because I don't have the charisma of a LeVar Ball.
So can you tell us a little bit about as the shoe connoisseur here, these $495?
Sure. Yeah. So what if I told you could take some Kobe signature shoes, slap the midsole from some Adidas Boost sneakers, which is very good. Boost is one of my favorite cushioning technologies. If we want to get into this my super nerdy shoe breakdown, and then also take like Steph Curry's signature shoes and kind of take some of those cues, and if you just put them all together, you get something that looks a little bit like this. The Big Baller brand Z02s, obviously for Lonzo Ball, the much talked about. High prospect in this year's draft, and obviously promoted by his father, the much talked about LeVar,
the Michael Jordan defeater,
patriarch of the Ball clan, man who says he could slay Michael Jordan in basketball. If you asked him to fight Michael Jordan, he'd probably say, "Yeah, I could take him."
Huh. And Jordan.
Sorry to interrupt over here, but from the producer cam over here, Baxter and Mitch over here, we want to know, Mitch, are you going to get these shoes at some point? I mean, it seems that you say you're going to be a shoe connoisseur. I mean, we've been talking about it off the air. We want to know.
Sure.
Are you going to do this?
Listen, I live on a writer's salary. I don't really have the capital. I don't want to sell my car to purchase a pair of shoes. My primary objection with these shoes was kind of the price point. And obviously they're, if you want to get into the marketing theory of it, they're positioning this as a luxury brand, which is ridiculous for other reasons. And they're selling a version of these shoes that is autographed by Lonzo. Comes in a box with white LEDs. It's very nice.
The undrafted rookie who we have no idea whether he's going to be a good pro yet or not.
Yeah, exactly.
And rookies aren't even really getting shoe deals anymore, and all of a sudden he comes in and sort of blows the water open.
Well, and so the weird thing is that rookies don't get signature shoes ever. I mean, LeBron, I don't even think LeBron, I can't remember off the top of my head, but LeBron probably didn't have one coming right out of school. He did shortly afterwards. The Air Zoom generation picked up pretty quickly, and obviously he's onto the 14th iteration of his signature line. But like Paul George just got a shoe deal, and he's been a superstar for a number of years now in the league. Kyrie took 3 or 4 years to get his. Kobe had a weird history with bouncing from Adidas over to Nike. But you don't really see rookies ever getting signature shoes. They will get shoe deals, obviously.
Yeah.
And they'll wear someone else's signature. But this was kind of a really radical departure, obviously, not just in not signing with a major company, but also producing the signature shoe for a kid who hasn't even been drafted yet.
Right, and we talk about this almost every week about how one of the reasons, the big reason that we love the NBA is so much of the off-court drama, the entertainment, and we both don't hate LeVar Ball. So you're annoyed
I would say
by
I
him.
might be getting there. LeVar Ball is starting to wear thin on me.
Yeah, and if I would hope that it's actually I don't really care, but I guess I would hope that it's not going to end up in some sort of exploitation of his son or just his son bombing out because he's got all this pressure and all this distraction from his dad. But in the meantime, it's vastly entertaining. I think a $500 pair of black shoes. Like I remember, when I used to care about buying basketball shoes, like when I played basketball in high school, you wanted something that like you thought gave you some ineffable, like nebulous, magical boost, right? Like you were like, not like when you're a kid when you think just pumping up the tongue is going to get you to jump like MJ.
Yeah, exactly.
But you wanted something that was, you described this as a lifestyle brand, and it's basically just it's a black shoe that you wear with your sweatpants on your off day, right? Like, So
I should say that they are genuinely trying to position it as like you wear these on the court and like it's supposed to. We don't know how good these shoes are performance-wise yet because they've just been announced. They're not really being produced in large quantities.
They say black is the absence of all color and all color and the combinations of all color. So maybe there's a shoe there that we can't even see.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear that it takes 6 months to make the shoes?
I did not hear that. I would be very terrified to know where they're being made.
I'm assuming it has to be in Chino Hills. It has to be somebody small.
Well, and the other thing to point out is that these shoes were put on. They were not technically put on sale. They were put up for pre-order. Supposed to ship in November. So you could drop $200 or $200 for the slides. We didn't even get into the sandals. They're selling slides for $200. Which, listen, man. But yeah, you could drop down $500 today, and then wait 6 months and get a pair of shoes. And if that's not a deal, man, I don't know what is.
If they're still selling $20 Starburys, that's the price point for me, right?
I remember when we were, when I was in grade school, we were buying Starburys. I do want to shout out the old Dada sneakers.
I was going to say you've got pretty much a shoe story for every brand there. I think it looks like.
We spend a lot of time. I distinctly remember me and my friends being in his basement looking at the old East Bay catalog, the very thick East Bay catalog, at which sneakers we were going to get and make the whole team buy for our grade school basketball team. I should have spent more time working on basketball and less time looking at sneakers, looking at it retrospectively. But hey, I can still buy sneakers now. I probably can't play basketball at that level right now.
All right, well, let's move on to the courts. A couple of guys who probably could have used some big baller brand shoes, and probably this is coming off season or in the next year or so, could probably afford them. Kyle Lowry and Gordon Hayward, their teams are now out of the playoffs. They participated in Sweeps Week, as you referred to it earlier.
Unceremoniously dumped from the second round of the NBA playoffs.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the Raptors and the Jazz and sort of their offseason questions, personnel decisions a little later in the show because we do want to get into some actual basketball that's being played currently. Another question of the day, though, is who is the extra rest going to benefit more of the sweepers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, or the Golden State Warriors? Let us know. Chime in on Facebook, as well as whether you plan to afford to buy a new pair of big baller brand shoes. But let's talk about the Cavaliers Raptors series first. That was the one that was a little bit more in hand. That one finished up a couple of days ago. What was your? Did you have any real takeaways from that series other than it went according to plan? It followed the script.
I mean, obviously for the Cavaliers, it pretty much followed the script. They're not. I will say they're. Of the two sweeping teams, they're probably breaking more of a sweat in advancing to the playoffs. I mean, we'll talk about the Warriors in a bit, but they're just obliterating teams. But it's really all going according to plan. The revelation for me has still been there's so much discourse around LeBron James, but he's still a top two amazing player in the NBA. I mean, he's averaging over 30 points a game, almost averaging a triple-double in the playoffs, and really just doing anything and everything for his team in a way that just really made me take a step back and say, whoa, I'm probably watching one of the best players of all time right here. I should maybe appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked incredible. He not only did all of the usual LeBron feats of athleticism and strength and superhero basketball ability, then he just sort of went back into street ball mode and was just straight up trolling the Raptors for 3 out of the 4 games, just doing stuff, whether it was spinning the ball and then hitting a 3 in Serge Ibaka's face, whether it was, getting the ball thrown off the backboard and dunking it in the first quarter of the first game of the series, whether it was obviously pretending to swig the beer and, think of the children watching on TV. But, that was something that, I don't think any of us saw coming. This is now, of course, he's in the Eastern Conference Finals for the 7th year in a row. This has become old hat to him, and he's sort of playing that way. He's expected to be there since, maybe last July.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're definitely watching a very comfortable LeBron.
Yeah, this is a different
a guy
performer.
Who knows, a guy who knows what the cast around him is like, and he has some pretty good supporting cast. We saw in the closeout game the other night, even Kyle Korver had 18 points on 6 for 8 shooting, which is pretty amazing. But we're just seeing a LeBron that's totally comfortable, totally in control, knows what he's doing, knows what he needs to do to win. And really, you can't, it's very hard to deny that they are going to just continue to roll through and get to that NBA Finals matchup that we've all been predicting.
Right. And we put this question out, who's going to need the rest more? Who could benefit from it? Neither one of them seems to really need it yet. The Cavaliers are that older team. They've got LeBron with a billion miles on his tread, right? They've got, several of those guys who have been on the finals teams of the last couple of years, Kyrie, Kevin Love, a lot of that supporting cast. Do you think that they were gunning for the sweep? They sort of always had it in hand. Who's going to stand to benefit the most besides obviously LeBron? He's kind of a robot. We don't even know whether he needs rest or breathes oxygen. But who else on the Cavaliers is this going to help? Because Kyrie's a young guy. Kevin Love doesn't seem like he's been straining much. Is there a supporting cast player that you're looking like he's going to need to step up in the Eastern Conference Finals?
Yeah, I mean. I would say probably they're, like you mentioned, all their kind of primary, the big three. A lot of their starters are probably fine. Like, I'm not worried about J.R. Smith blowing up in the Eastern Conference Finals, at least for rest reasons. I mean, listen, there's J.R. Smith. You don't trust that dude. But some of the older guys they brought in to support, Channing Frye, Darren Williams, Korver, even
right.
All guys that are kind of getting up there, and they're not playing heavy minutes. But for guys like that, if you are going to need them to step up in a more crucial role in a conference finals or in a finals matchup, you want them to be as relatively fresh as they can be. So looking at some of those supporting guys, I definitely think because the Cavaliers are ever so slightly more top heavy than say the Warriors are, I think the extra rest is really going to benefit those supporting cast.
And you know who is extra rested is Larry Sanders. When's he going to get his shot? Is he even on the playoff roster?
No, they cut Larry Sanders.
Okay, fair enough.
Because
he's Larry Sanders and hasn't played basketball in 3 years. All right, let's look at the Raptors. They got swept out. This is again like according to their script every year. They're like the new Pacers, who were the new Bulls, and ending their season against the Cleveland Cavaliers is just part of their storybook.
Yep.
Kyle Lowry is going to be a free agent.
Yep, officially opted out.
He's officially opted out.
Player
right,
option.
Told the media, which was a little bit of an unorthodox move. I mean, to go ahead and just say I'm opting out. Now, that doesn't mean he's leaving for sure.
Yeah.
He said he was exploring his free agency options. The Raptors can give him the most. They can give him 5 years, $200 million-ish. He's 31 years old. Do you have not a sense? I won't ask you to reveal any sources you might have, but do you have an idea of whether the Raptors would want him back, or would it sort of be like a mutually beneficial for him to go explore his options? And then, as Bucks fans and people who could use an impact point guard, where do you see possible potential landing spots, teams that would benefit from an all-star like Kyle Lowry?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like a lot of teams would really benefit from adding him. Obviously, like you said, an all-star. I mean, people have been talking about, is he going to go play with the Spurs? The Bucks have been kind of floated around, although that's a pretty long shot given the amount of money that they're tying up into their own young core. But honestly, if Kyle Lowry does want to go win a championship on the timeline that he's on, over 30 point guards certainly can maintain for a while, but you're not, you have to be very careful with the potential fall off in his play, which is also a reason why I think the Raptors might be hesitant to actually give him that full 5 years, because when you end up paying a 36-year-old point guard, I can't do the math, but a lot of money, that's a real risk to set. Yeah, like $40 million, which I still can't wrap my head around that CBA because it's
it'll be a good topic of conversation for us for the offseason when the numbers are crazy.
The numbers are so large that it breaks my mind.
Well, you mentioned the Spurs. I mean, as in terms of Kyle Lowry aging point guards. I mean, the Spurs now. Tony Parker is out injured. He's not going to play again this playoffs. That could be a landing spot for him. And we've seen the effectiveness of skinny motivated, in shape Kyle Lowry. We've certainly seen the detriment of fat Kyle Lowry. That's not really a guy that you maybe want to commit $200 million in 5 years worth of contention, worth of salary to. But at the same time, this is the best time in Toronto Raptors franchise history. This might be something where they just want to ride out the 50 wins for as long as they can go, and maybe LeBron stops being superhuman at some point.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, The other sweep. Let's go over to the Warriors Jazz. Now you were a Utah Jazz believer, a disciple. You were singing their praises and taking note, as their shirt said. Take note of the Jazz. You were taking note long before this.
Hashtag nightlife.
Now they are swept. They are gone. They've got their own decisions to make. What did you make of that series? What did you make of the Warriors? Is there anything to be learned from that? And where do we see the Jazz going from here?
I mean, the Warriors are just the Warriors. They are. If you're going to beat the Warriors. And this is not my original idea. I definitely saw somebody floating this, but you can't just hope that the Warriors star has a bad game, right? Because Kevin Durant had a bad game. Oh, but Steph Curry's still there. Oh, right. Steph had a bad game. Oh, but Klay Thompson's still there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they've got three or four of the five best players on the court every single time they play the game.
And so while I do love the Jazz, and I genuinely think that there is something there if they can keep that team together, although that's going to be an expensive prospect too, given some of the contracts that are up. I don't know if there's a whole lot to be taken away by, we got wrecked by one of the best teams we've ever seen.
Right.
It's like it was just going to happen, and as unfortunate it is, and I saw some people today arguing the entertainment merits of watching the Warriors just wreck shop across the entire Western Conference.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to look at this Jazz team and say, they disappointed or, they underwhelmed, because that was just the reality of whoever played the Warriors is you're just going to get stomped.
Yeah.
Unless something amazing happens or you have LeBron. Right. And that's not going to happen for another round or two.
Yeah, and the guy with the second best hair game in the NBA behind you, I would say, Gordon Hayward. They've got some decisions to make too. So before he left the floor after the Jazz had gotten beat. The crowd gave him a standing ovation. It felt kind of like it did at the last Bucks game when the Bucks fans were very, very courteous and classy and gave the team a standing ovation. It definitely seemed like that standing ovation was communicated right into Gordon Hayward's consciousness of please stay here, right? And he gave the peace out or I see you, I recognize it.
Totally. Yeah.
Where do you think he's going to be back in Utah? Where do you see Gordon Hayward playing basketball?
It's really tough, and I totally understand. Obviously the fans doing all they can to say no, please stay, because it's so hard to lose a star of that caliber. While you wouldn't necessarily call Gordon Hayward a superstar in the league, he's still obviously a very valuable player.
Could be on that all-NBA edge, right?
Yeah,
he's looking at a similar extension, basically.
Yeah, and he's probably looking at a max extension. Obviously they want him to stay. I do think there's enough interesting parts on that Jazz team that you could make the case to him to say, hey, stick around. We're going to continue to get better. Yeah. We have a lot of young guys that are improving, and at some point we could take a run at maybe a lesser version of this Warriors super team whenever that comes around. If you just sign the we'll give you the max, obviously. Stick around and we'll build something. I think they do have a pretty strong case for that. And Hayward has always seemed like a fairly loyal guy that isn't going to jump ship just to go chase. Obviously, people connect him to his college coach Brad Stevens all the time and say, he'll go sign a deal with the Celtics and win a couple championships there, but there's the Jazz would have the financial incentive for him to stick around, and I think it makes a lot of sense for him to stay and try to build things there.
Yeah. You mentioned the Celtics. Let's move over to that series. The Celtics and Wizards now 2-2. We've had the usual war of words that comes with, and the war of fists and shoulders and
shoves
getting
and
thrown into the crowd. That comes when you play the Wizards, who sort of know what they have to do to beat the one seed Celtics. Right? They got to muck it up. They got to play a little uglier. Isaiah Thomas has been both a revelation and then more recently, sort of the Wizards seem to have found a little bit of an antidote for him and the Celtics offense. Now we're at 2-2. Where do you see that series standing? The Wizards have a little bit of momentum, but the Celtics obviously the talent and the higher seed and the home court advantage.
Yeah, we have seen the series go largely along home court lines of. Celtics pick up the first two at home. Wizards have picked up the second two,
a couple of blowouts
in pretty convincing fashion. I was ingrained with a sense very similar to the one that I have about the Bucks that you shouldn't trust the Wizards because in past years obviously they've had a lot of talent and just kind of stumbled through it, never quite put everything together.
Yeah, not a good bench, pretty limited shooting.
Exactly, and they still have some of those problems. Their bench is still not great. Although Bradley Beal's remained healthy, and I think he is a hugely important piece. Otto Porter is a guy that I believed in. I gave up on him a year or two too early, obviously, but coming out of the draft, I always believed in him. I do think the Wizards definitely have the firepower to take this series, but if they do make it to a Game 7 in Boston, it's so hard to come out and beat that Celtics team. Isaiah is obviously going to be pumped up. If they get contributions from a couple of other guys, if it's Jay Crowder, Avery Bradley has a good game, Marcus Smart starts hitting threes randomly, as he is prone to do sometimes. I do think if this goes to 7, it's going to favor the Celtics.
Yeah, and last week one of our questions of the day was about the man bun and your hair in particular. Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk has either alternately, depending on your perspective, either the best or the worst hair in all of sports, I would say, depending on whether he's on the court or in the locker room afterward. But Draymond Green called him a dirty player, which is a bit of a pot calling the kettle black situation, and Isaiah Thomas basically recognized that, stood up for his teammates yesterday, saying, it's a joke that Draymond's calling him a dirty player. The Kelly versus Kelly, the Kelly Oubre versus Kelly Olynyk battle, dawn of justice. Who would you have taken if they actually had to come to blows there? I mean, Olynyk's got the size and the reach. Maybe Oubre's got the young vitality, a little more scrappy. Who knows? And would that be like is that a microcosm of the series?
I think it sums up a lot of that series in a really interesting way. I would give the advantage to Kelly Oubre, not Olynyk, because Kelly Olynyk reads to me more as kind of an awkward dude, or kind of a maybe, obviously he's a very coordinated, skilled basketball player. Yeah. But a lot of his incidents have been of the kind of awkward, maybe intentional, maybe unintentional, hard to say type. And I think if you actually were to square those two guys up and say, no, you actually have to fight, Oubre's got the youthful spirit that I would take over.
He certainly looks the part.
Kelly Olynyk's Canadian. Canadians don't even know how to fight.
Yeah. And ugly dudes, when they're athletes, they just don't seem like they're as tough. And I guess most hockey players would disagree with that. But in the NBA, like if you look like that, it doesn't seem like you're going to win in a street fight. But that's neither here nor there. Rockets Spurs, our last series, they got that game 5 tonight.
Yes.
That one also is all squared up at 2 apiece. And another one that has been alternately, it sort of has ridden game by game on which team has the narrative and has the advantage. Yeah. I'm going to ask you the same thing. My usual level of earth-shattering, in-depth question. And where do you see that series?
Where do I see
right now? We're at Spurs tonight for Game 5.
Yeah, I mean that series obviously has been kind of defined by injuries. Unfortunately, Tony Parker went down with a really brutal tendon tear that he's out for the rest of this season. Also, Nene, who was a really revelation for the Rockets this year, playing as their center.
Yeah, he gone.
Also out for the rest of the year. And so we are seeing some fairly interesting adjustments in the wake of those. But I think that the Parker injury probably hurts San Antonio more than the Nene injury is going to hurt Houston, just because Houston's strength is largely based on his three-point shooting, which they just inserted Eric Gordon into their starting lineup to bolster that three-point shooting and maybe play some small ball if Clint Capella runs into trouble or doesn't play well or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And so generally I do think that you're probably just going to see more of the overwhelming bombardment from Houston than you would then obviously Pop is a great coach, going to make some smart adjustments, but the depth of San Antonio's bench has been a worry for me too. So yeah. I think that's probably
the two thoughts I've had when watching those games is the one that we already are well aware of is of Kawhi Leonard being an incredibly gifted and transcendent player, but more so defensively. I mean, what he's done on James Harden, or what he had done until last game, which was basically shut down arguably the best, most efficient offensive player in the league, was incredible. I mean, it was sort of the most intuitive fix. Like put your all-world defender on the best offensive player on the other team, and it was such an instant, quick fix that it was really mind-boggling that they hadn't been doing this basically from the start. The other one is LaMarcus Aldridge on the other end. I mean, offensively, like where has that guy gone? Where is the player from that they signed that we've seen for a decade? That he's basically become the third or fourth most impactful player on that team.
Yeah, for sure. And LaMarcus Aldridge might legitimately hinge if this is a contentious rest of the series, or if it's if the Spurs will just continue to kind of try to struggle to match the offensive intensity that Houston's bringing.
Do we have a Facebook comment that we wanted to read?
Actually, I did want to swing back around. We did have Zach hanging out. Shout out to Zach in the comments.
Hi, Zach.
Who based off of my my comments about some of the Wizards, asking about Bradley Beal, if he needs to step up, what he needs to do to help John Wall. He's actually done a really good job of that. I mean, Bradley Beal's job is to make shots, right? And he shot very well from 3-point range in the regular season. Frankly, if he just continues to be healthy and continues to make shots, that takes a ton of the pressure off of John Wall to kind of create and shoot on his own, which Wall's had his struggles in the past with 3-point shooting, and you don't really want to rely on that necessarily. But just having that second primary scorer to take a little bit of the load off of your lead dog, I think helps so much. And it shifts the attention of the Celtics defense, which is another really important consideration, because if they can just stick Avery Bradley on Wall, Bradley's a great defender. He can impact that game, but if they have to think about, okay, we have to guard Wall and Beal, then suddenly you're splitting that up and you're getting a lot more good looks.
Yeah, so Zach's question was whether Bradley Beal needs to step up in this series. Is that it? And that's a great question. I just think it's dangerous because Bradley Beal is the kind of player that you want to be your outside shooter, your third option on a really good team, right? When the responsibility is on Brad Beal to be the offensive driver, and obviously John Wall is the playmaker, the guy that gets into the lane, that either gets to the basket, kicks out. But if Bradley Beal is the guy that you're relying on to be your sort of 1A scorer, he's liable to go 6 for 24 shooting in any game, right? Just as often as he is to hit his threes.
Yeah.
It's that old obnoxious cliche. You live by the jump shot or the 3-pointer, you die by it. But Brad Beal, with his just the experience, the youth, just his game, where it really is so dependent on his outside shooting and how it falls early on, makes it really, really risky for them. If a really risky proposition to rely too heavily on him, I think. And John Wall's been doing just as much work as he possibly could, but it's hard for me to see a team like that is as thin and offensively limited can get by the Celtics.
Yeah, and I mean a really good illustration of that point is the last 2 games for Bradley Beal, where the one game he went 4 for 12 for 11 points. Granted, these are both Wizards wins, and then the second game he goes off for 29 and leads all scorers. So. It is a little bit dangerous, but if the Wizards are going to A, win this series, and B, be a pretty strong deterrent for the Cavaliers, Bradley Beal's going to have to maintain that level of play.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to do it for our show.
That is about it. I mean,
I'm like Kelly Olynyk, or like Isaiah Thomas said, I would never call you a dirty player. You are the consummate team player and a wonderful partner. And
you as well, Jimmy.
I'll save the rest of this for off mic.
Oh, okay. All right, let's quick shut this thing down.
But all right, well, thanks a lot for watching, you guys.
Yep.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for getting involved. Shout out to Zach for his sweet Brad Beal question. And sorry we couldn't get to a couple more of them. But thanks again for watching Double Dribble Show. Make sure you're following all the shows on Bruce Sports, and you can follow Mitch. Where can they follow you on Twitter?
Get me on Twitter at Mitch Vomhoff.
And I'm at Jimmy Carlton 88. Enjoy the rest of the playoffs. We actually have some real games. We good? All right.